All right, let's do this. Let's do this, guys. Thank you guys all for coming out to our second episode of our Asian Coaches Summer Series, sponsored by Rising Coaches and Shot Quality. Just wanted to give a shout out to Rising Coaches. I'm sure all of you guys know who they are, but they do such great work with our coaching community in terms of networking, development, putting out great coaching content. And Shot Quality, who sponsored this series with us. It's a fantastic edge for your team. You can gain by quantifying the quality of shots to optimize your decision-making as a coach. Currently, it can be a big-time measure. There's only 8 NBA teams that use it and 40 Division I teams that use it. So thanks to Shot Quality and Rising Coaches for sponsoring this series. But I'm excited for today's speaking lineup. We have 3 excellent Asian coaches on the docket today. But first, I'm excited to introduce our moderator / host, MC, motivational speaker, author, actor, dancer, influencer, you call it, he's done it. Coach Hernando Planelis. He's done it all in the coaching world too. He's been the head coach of the New Zealand under-19 national team. Also last year, he's the head coach of William Jessup. He's also coaching the G League for the Maine Red Claws. But his longest stint recently was the associate head coach of Duke women's basketball, where he was for 7 years. And now, with his, like he just told us, with his kids in college, he's the associate head coach of the Fighting Illini women's basketball team. So get ready to be inspired. I know I'm ready. Coach Hernando, please take it away. Show is yours.
Man, this is amazing. I am excited to be on. I love it when people go down like my resume, because it really just shows that I can't hold the job, right? Like you're just everywhere. You just can't hold a job with everything. But guys, I'm honored to be here with you, and I'm honored to be on with these 2 great coaches that we have. And I've been thinking today of like a theme, right? A theme of the stories you're going to hear. You're going to hear the stories, philosophies, strategies, tactics, and it's resilience, right? Like we tell our players that we got to be resilient. We tell our kids, we tell everybody around that we got to be resilient. Yet sometimes in our own career, we stop short of being resilient. And sometimes because it's money, because of what we're supposed to do. Trust me, my mom to this day, I'm 44 years old, still asks me when I'm going to be a nurse at Kaiser Permanente. Okay, I'm just saying, like, it just happens all the time. She's like, Mijo, when are you going to stop coaching and be a nurse? I'm like, Mom, I'm not going to be a nurse. It's too late for me. Can't stand blood. Don't want to do it. But it's like, it's resilience. And the question I'm going to pose to you today as you listen to these coaches is, are you resilient? And I'm sure all you guys are going to say yes. Then the second thing I want you to do is I want you to give yourself credit for that, right? Coaching is such a crazy, crazy profession. We're always taught to be super humble, which we are. And we are, dare I say it, because we're Asian. But we're humble also because that's what other coaches have told us to be. And everyone says you put your head down, you work hard, people are going to see you. And the one thing about it, though, is that we forget to tell ourselves that we have been resilient and have marched along this journey, right? And I think one of the best advice I ever got was Don Casey, former NBA coach. He talked about, you just got to show up, right? And we show up and we do a great job, which is what we've been doing, which is why we're here. Then it's going to help propel us. And for those of you who are looking, trying to get in the college level, the pro level, and again, you'll hear the coaches today, listen to a little of their story, because I'm going to ask them to give the elevator speech of who they are and what they do, but then also picture yourself being there. And you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to say some affirmations today. Like a couple of affirmations I want you to say is I am, and you're going to fill up the blank. Now, one of the biggest affirmations I say every day is I am, and you guys are going to laugh at me. But when I go in the mirror in the morning with my morning breath and my messed up hair, I'm saying I am a badass, right? You've got to remind yourself who you are. Now, when you remind yourself who you are, guess what? You are then able and equipped to remind your team, your family, your kids who they are and empower them with what they're doing. All right. But enough about me and what all my crazy stuff I do. We're going to get this thing rolling. All right, we're going to get this thing rolling Be ready to take some notes. Be ready to be amazed. Our first coach, if I'm correct, is Coach Perry Wang from the Seattle Storm. All right, Coach, I've never met you, but I'm so happy you are on. He's with the Seattle Storm. And if you follow basketball, which you probably do, they won the WNBA championship. And this is amazing. He's with us today. And I think just last week, he's at the White House. And now this week, he is with us. But beyond that, you're going to love the story because he also coaches in the NBA G League for the Birmingham team, I believe, if I'm correct. So, Coach, I appreciate you coming on. Please, share a little bit piece of your story and then jump into the knowledge that you're going to drop today.
Yeah, thanks, sir. That's quite an introduction. Appreciate the love from you guys always, and just from social media and all that. And it's been great. Just a hell of an experience. I think your message just in the beginning, just about resilience, resonates with me. Mike's on this call, and I don't know if he remembers when he was at USF, I was like a puppy dog, following him around. One, I guess, preseason, basically trying to find a job. I was between jobs from the G League, and he was nice enough to at least humor me, although I didn't get to work with him, obviously. But just the message overall is just from our standpoint as Asians, it's a tough industry to break into, and for all intents and purposes, it sucks because a lot of the people around us want what's best for us, and sometimes when they see the struggle that we're going through and they don't see us struggling to pay the bills or just finding something to feed ourselves, it's tough. And I think that message is very clear. In the beginning, for me, even just the past 2 years is when my parents finally realized, like, this is actually a career for me now, that I can actually support myself off of this and actually make a decent living off of it. So with all that being said, yeah, my journey's been great. I've worked in the G League, worked for the Golden State Warriors in the G League, worked for the Phoenix Suns, now with the New Orleans Pelicans, and then obviously now with the Seattle Storm, got promoted this year as an assistant coach. So life's a trip, and I'm just happy to be where I'm at right now.
Well, Coach, you just being here is huge for us. If you don't mind, and just break down just a little bit for us, during those tough moments, right? When first of all, your parents, and we all know, like, other parents are great, but Asian parents always expect you to be something or somewhere, right? To talk about, and I know for me personally, right, I felt guilt. I felt shame in many ways, like doing something that I wanted to do. How were you able to kind of break through that and continue on this path where you are now?
Honestly, I'm very stubborn, to be very frank, right? So it's just, you just push through, and no matter what it was, however little deterrence that maybe your parents, little subtle jabs, like, hey, you want to go take that CPA exam? Because that's what my major was business and being an accountant. So it's like, hey, you want to go take those, buy those books now? You want to go take that test now? So it's like little subtle jabs there. And it's like, hey, how do you expect to pay for this apartment, going up to there or whatever? So, you got to roll with the punches. And for me, like I said, I'm just super stubborn person, and for better, for worse, I pushed through everything that everyone said about me, that maybe it wasn't, they never actually said it was the wrong decision, but you could tell, like, they were very concerned about my life choices at that point. So, my mom is, the definition of the tiger mom. And so she's going to try to protect me as much as possible, and always wants best for me and be hard on me. So I think that's one thing that was very, very tough, is just pushing through that and hoping one day that she would still have that support and love, and which they always do, while I'm trying to pursue this goal, and ended up working out.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I love it. I appreciate you diving in with that stuff. Vulnerability is a big part of coaching, as you know, and sharing our stories to really empower others is huge. Well, let's get going. I know you've got a great presentation. I think you have some video. I have no idea what you have, actually. And just rain with some knowledge with us, Coach. Come on.
All right, let's see if we can get this rolling. So basically, I'm going to roll through our offensive philosophy and just how we execute things, how we've built our quote unquote championship mentality kind of thing. I think that a lot of this stuff can apply to all levels. For me personally, I'm going to preface by saying I will not take credit for any of this that's been built, right? This has been built before me. Everybody can see this presentation, right? Just making sure. Okay. So just for me, I got here in 2018, and this team that was already here, from Sue Bird to Brianna Stewart to Alicia Clark, Jewel Lloyd, Natasha Howard, like they had all been here. We had added Natasha Howard that season, which became a dynamic part of our offense. But a lot of the concepts that were brought over were from the Spurs, and then also the coach before the one that I worked for, Dan Hughes. The coach before that was Jenny Busick, who's now an assistant coach for, I believe, the Indiana Pacers under Rick Carlisle, and she was with Rick Carlisle with the Dallas Mavericks. So a lot of the concepts is just free flowing, understanding spacing, understanding pace, understanding that there's really no wrong actions as long as you play within our concepts. And there's a lot of reads and reacts. Even within our sets that we build out, we try to build sets where there's spacing that's aligned with what we want to do. So just knowing that knowing first of all that you have the right personnel, I think that's the number one thing. For me, you got to have players. Like I think every coach understands that you're only as good as your players. And so from the college level to the pro level, I mean, if you have great players, it makes the coach look great. So that's the number one thing. We have an MVP candidate every year in Brianna Stewart, Sue Bird. For those that don't know, shame on you if you don't know who Sue Bird is, but she is the GOAT. And just having her on the floor, being able to direct traffic like that, and being as unselfish as she is, having that start from her is very crucial to what we do. And then just down the line, Jewel Lloyd, like I said, Alicia Clark, down the line, even to our bench players that year, Sammy Wickham, Tiffany Prince, Mercedes Russell, Ezzie Magloire, like everybody, they're all very talented, right? And then to play in this system, we call it our flow. To play in our flow, you have to be highly conditioned. And some of our athletes are some of the best that are conditioned in the whole WNBA, and they can run and with pace, and they can move and transition. They can play in early offense. So that's a big part of our keys is, playing with pace, not necessarily to a point where you're running like a chicken with his head cut off, but you're running to spots, you're getting to spots because you want to space that defense early and often and create these advantages where you can get downhill, get in the paint, spray for open threes more than anything. So first two, personnel and conditioning, pace and space. Third thing, ball movement, player movement, honestly. And again, that kind of goes with the pace and space, but there's a lot of cutting. There's a lot of read and reacting, and you'll see we have these 2-player alignments on the weak side. We have these 3-player alignments on the weak side that I'll get into that'll trigger certain actions once the ball is hit there. And then these actions become just decision making. So either through our guards or through our bigs. A lot of times it is through our bigs. And again, personnel is a big deal. If you have bigs that can pass, that's all the power to you. And this is why this offense works so well. If you have a big that can pass and shoot, even better. Getting downhill, getting in the paint, coming off pick and rolls, that creates just a lot of indecision from the defense. The next one, it's just controlled freedom, honestly. It's controlled chaos for other teams, honestly. A lot of times you'll see us come down the floor and we won't run anything. We'll just start in a drag screen, and we'll have 3 players aligned on the other side. Doesn't matter how it is. We have philosophies and concepts for every single type of player alignment. And once they get into it, it's pretty much they just play off of each other, and it's really beautiful to see, honestly. And the last thing, like I said, we try to really instill in our players that nothing's wrong as long as you're making the cuts or going into a screen with effort, or you're going into decision making quickly. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing. The only wrong thing is catching the ball and holding. And I'm not sure how many people have heard about the 0.5 mentality, but it's the same idea. It's 0.5 mentality. You catch it. Are you reading a closeout? Are you catching it? Are you getting into a ball screen? those are the little decisions, even off the ball. Are you reading your teammate coming off a pick and roll? Do you need to get to a spot where you're available for them? So all these things are encompassed in just our offensive flow. Just some stats for you guys, for the analytics nerds. For 2020 and 2018, those were our championship years. A lot of times people think, like, you know, obviously in the NBA, it's a big thing, right? Shooting a lot of threes now. But for us, we shoot threes and we're very efficient, but we're balanced because we do score in the paint as well. So I think this year's kind of showing just a little, we have a different team in terms of personnel than the past few years. So some of our deficiencies are showing a little bit this year, where we haven't been able to score as much in the paint, even though we're scoring well from three. But for us, when our offense is flowing and clicking, you know, we have, again, shooters of all sorts up and down the line. In 2020, 2018, we had some of the highest offensive efficiency ratings, but we score. We're balanced at points in the paint and scoring off of threes. So just to give you guys a visual and understand that it's not just a certain type of shot we're searching for. And honestly, we don't preach, you know, like the Houston Rockets with the Harden era, that only threes and only layups. It's that we want to attack the paint and we want to create the defense in collapsing and create these open threes, or create another dump off opportunity, or create these 3-point actions that we can continue to take advantage of over the course of possession. So just diving into some clips, our whole entire base of our offense is our spacing. And we drill this every day. We just call it drive, kick, pass. But it's basically just making sure we have players in the corners, in the wings, and also making sure that we have outlets. So here, this is just the defensive possession, right? We're coming down, and now you see in the corners, that's Jordan Canada in the left corner, and then you have Stephanie Talbot right there. They're not on top of each other. They ran directly in transition to those spots. Now that creates so much space for the defense to have to close out on. And so we always pride ourselves in making that next pass. And that's the one that's usually open more often than not. So that drive, that kick, and then that pass. And we try to be in those positions for each other. Some teams that are on, especially when I'm in the G League and you're trying to teach players that are coming from college that haven't played in this type of spread type situation, we tend to put X's on the floors, or we even put squares. This past year in the G League bubble, we had limited amount of time. So every gym we went to, we had our director of operations put down a big square box in that deep corner on both sides, big square box. Outside on that 45 or that wing, a square box in the slot, which is about the elbow extended, and one at the top. So making sure we're spaced, and we're not necessarily hugging the 3-point line either. We tend to call it the 3.5-point line or 4-point line, and we want them to be spaced, and we want them to be able to shoot from that, or step into shots like that, or attack off the catch, and be able to manipulate the defense again and try to attack the paint to score. But like I said, on this, the spacing was great. We got an open shot off of that. Again, this is a lot of our early offense. If we can get stops, we can get transition offense going, kicking the heads. Again, on the weak side, you got Sue at the wing, kind of maybe wanted her to slide just a bit to her left a little more, but that she's fine right there. Again, she's not hugging the 3-point line. She's on that 4-point line. Alicia Clark, 32, is in that left corner. Perfect spacing. And our penetration doesn't always have to be off of a closeout or dribble penetration. It can be off of a pick and roll that creates that type of dribble penetration. Again, kick to the corner. Now we have that space, and always, just the way defenses are built, that next pass is hard to get to. And again, it's just that drive, kick, pass philosophy that we have. Here again, early offense, we're looking for a post up. Stewie doesn't have anything, kicks out. We're just moving that ball, making that defense rotate. And now we can drive baseline. And again, corner. And we'll continue to just drive, kick, pass. Sometimes we don't have it on that initial. Sue may have been able to slide over to that wing over here and be able to get an open shot, but nonetheless, that creates another opening, and we just continue. Again, you see this quick decisions, attacking closeouts. You're either shooting, driving, or passing.
Coach, do you teach this primarily first 5-on-0, or do you put 5-on-3, or how do you start the teaching part with this stuff for them to get it?
The first part of it, honestly, as selfish as it sounds for a lot of players, is like when they get a kick out pass, they want to shoot that one.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's like, it's hard for them to understand to just move that next pass. Like sometimes your pass, your catch on that corner, your catch on that wing, even if you feel open, just moving that ball to the next one. And so honestly, a lot of times we break down our shooting is just having a corner and a wing. And we're just literally in our spot shooting, instead of just one person or one line in the corner, this is how we'll start it. We'll have a coach just kick to the wing, they throw an extra pass to the corner, and we'll have another pass to that wing. Something super simple like that, just in the beginning. So they get the concept of, yes, move that ball, extra pass, just to create that hockey assist, as we always like to say. And then even from then on, it's like just moving from there. Then you can go into 3-on-3. Then you're working on maybe on the weak side, driving based on now the player is making a read off a coach, right? So now you can have, if you have managers or if you have coaches on the floor that can play dummy defense, now you can create a situation on the weak side or the strong side of the floor where you're dribble penetration in the paint. Now you're just reading the defense, who's going to be open. Now, if you're kicking to the corner, again, extra pass to the wing. If you kick to the wing, extra pass to the corner, and then we're playing off of that. And then from there, you can evolve to a 4-on-4 setting. When our drive, kick, pass, and every day when we start practice, we do like 5 or 6 revolutions of it, but it's just drive, kick, pass 3 times, and we'll have a coach actually yell it. And it's unbelievable that it's very hard for players to understand this concept in the beginning. And it even I'll say the WNBA players, female players, are much more intellectual in that part because they can pick it up. G League players, it's tougher because a lot of them are used to having the ball in their hands, so they don't understand to make that next pass. And on top of that, they don't understand to move. So when our drive, kick, pass segment, it's just 4 players on the perimeter. We start with just a dribble penetration. They make their own reads, drive, kick, pass. They drive it, kick, pass, and they drive it again. They do that 3 times, and they're just learning how to move with each other in synchronization. I think the term that Jenny Busick used to say was just making jazz. You're trying to make jazz basically with each other. So again, just a couple more clips of this drive, kick, pass, kick. Okay, Katie kind of comes, doesn't have anything, but again, we're spacing on the backside, so we have that extra pass. It's not always just wing corner. Sometimes it's top to wing, wing to top. Okay, so that's kind of our base drive, kick, pass. Like I said, once we're getting in the paint, we're creating these disadvantages. We ideally want to have that spacing, like the clips that I just showed you. The next part of our concepts is just, we call it a pull, and we set a lot of step ups, or some teams that ice create this action for us. So in essence, when our guard or ball handler is coming on the wing and taking it down low like this, and we have a big that's diving to the rim, creating basically a ton of gravity from the defense. We always want to have a puller, and that's what Mercedes is doing coming to the ball. Essentially, you just want to be available for your teammate. It doesn't matter if you're a wing or a big, but it's in transition, we want to always have this puller. So as soon as that big dives, again, we're moving on a string, hit, and then here's the next action. It's quick. She caught it. She's not necessarily a 3-point shooter, so she knows what she's doing. She's going to the next action, going into a pick and roll, sprinting in, getting out, and see as you watch it, just the pace of this creates a little bit of indecision just from the whole defense. So now you have to have somebody tag on her, kick to Stewie. Now you create that disadvantage on the weak side. So that concept of just having that puller is a big part of our offense. Sometimes when you don't pull, you don't have any. You'll see a lot of times ball handlers will come off on that step up or on an ice pick and roll that come off, and they have nobody to throw to because it's either they're shooting it or they're trying to dime to that big. But if you don't have an outlet, you always need somebody to have a pressure release. Here's another concept. Again, we didn't quite have a puller this time. Jewel is on that wing. She's trying to get to that pull segment. She's a little late on it. Doesn't matter. So now close out pick and rolls. Again, this is a quick decision making. It doesn't have to be when you catch the ball. The decision making here is Ezzy, who's in that corner right there, about to sprint up into that pick and roll. She made the decision. I'm sprinting into this pick and roll. and getting out of it quick. And now, again, this just is hard to guard because you can't scout this. And this is just within our basic early offense. It's very difficult for teams to scout what we don't even know what we're doing. Okay, so now I'll get into some actions and alignments that you'll typically see for us on a game-to-game basis. So we call these just 3-player alignments. So you see this, we'll have an action coming down. It's just a simple drag screen. And again, you see on the weak side, this is most of the time how we want to play. We don't have the traditional old school bigs where we're rim running and trying to pound it inside. We tend to want to set more drag screens than anything else to create that action to get in the paint. So right here, we set that drag screen. We don't have anything. Our first most basic action, slash action, which I'm sure a ton of you have seen, part of the old Princeton offense. Let's just kick here. As soon as you kick to that big, we're slashing that middle. Now we're getting into a 2-man game. Very simple, very easy to clear, but it's subtle because the one thing like I talked about, alluded to earlier, was your cuts matter. And 32 right there, Alicia Clark, her cutting through creates just that wake. All right. And now you create so much space to allow Jewel to get into the paint. And so when you cut with pace, like a lot of my coach in the G League, they'll actually say this, if you don't cut hard, you're an asshole. And we don't necessarily go that far to say like you're an asshole, but I would say that if you don't cut hard, you're not understanding that you're opening up something for your teammate. Just like in transition, if you don't cut to the rim, sometimes you're opening up a 3-point shot for your teammate. And a lot of times players don't understand that. And it is hard to actually build this in. So this is one of our most basic actions. And it does take a while. This year is case in point with somewhat of a new roster, getting them to understand that this action isn't just false action. You don't just jog through this motion. Like this action means something, because sometimes if it's Stewie up there and your man stunts, if you cut hard, you're going to get a layup too. So just understanding that everything we do in this offense relates and it helps everything. Another example of slash action, again, 3-player alignment. We kind of set a drag, we slip, don't get anything on that first side kick. Now we kind of get through, slash, now again, 2-man game. And like I said, there's no wrong action. We have this in our system. We call it pitch game. It doesn't have to be you coming off a DHO. It doesn't have to be you coming off a pick and roll. You can just pitch to the big if you don't feel like it, especially if teams go under. It's very hard to defend a pitch action if they go under pick and rolls. Again, if you have cerebral players that can make the right reads and cuts to the rim. I hope I'm not going fast. If anybody has any questions about slash action, just let me know. So our next one is strong action. Okay, again, we didn't have anything. We kicked to the weak side, didn't have anything on that 2-man action, or didn't feel like we had anything. Again, we have 3-player alignment on this side. We have Stewie, we have Stephanie Talbot on that right wing, and we have Sue now. Okay, so now strong action just means that it's a guard-to-guard pin down. So it's guard pin down, flying off of this thing. And again, we give our players freedom. You can set that pin down, go back to the strong side corner, or set that pin down and go through. And by her going through, creates a lot of awake, creates this off the nail help, and then we get an open 3. Here's another example of this. Again, drag screens. As you can see, all of this stuff is not set. This is a lot of times when we get a rebound or if we get a turnover, and we don't get anything in the beginning, we just yell out flow, and players just understand like this is what we're trying to do. Again, strong action, guard to guard pin down. Jules coming off this thing, pull up jumper in your kill spot. Okay, so that's very, very simple. One other thing I would talk about, if you have pretty smart players and players that can pick this up very easily, as you kick, we don't actually always tell them to screen for each other, like the pin down. It doesn't always have to be a pin down. It could actually be the corner coming up to flare to get some creativity out of it. You could actually set a pin down right here, and Jewel could actually curl this instead. Because it also depends on personnel. Sometimes if a personnel is not comfortable coming off a ball screen or a DHO, then we'll tell them, hey, you can curl through, or you can set the flare screen and go through if you don't feel comfortable with it. So a lot of times they can make their own reads off of that. And then another aspect of this too is if you want to manipulate the defense too on the weak side, so Alicia Clark, which is more of a straight line driver versus Jewel Lloyd, say they had been flip-flopped. You know, one of them could actually just interchange. You could just tell them to exchange with each other, and then create that type of action where it's a pin down coming off strong action. Hopefully that makes sense.
Now, Coach, how with all this flow, how much time do you spend, or would you recommend these coaches spending on player development over the course of the practice to work on those concepts as opposed to working on the team stuff?
Yes, so what you're seeing on this film right now is a culmination of almost 7 years. So it's like, it takes a long time to do this. That's why my suggestion is to pick 1 or 2 actions that you'll see on here and just rep those as much as you can. Because honestly, to me, a lot of it is just player movement. As long as you're getting the offense or the defense moving, that's the biggest thing. You just don't want stagnation. As long as you're getting the ball moving side to side, that's the biggest part of it. We spend an hour, I'd say 45 minutes working on these flow actions. So we break it down. Again, we start with drive, kick, pass. We'll do scripting, but our scripting isn't plays. Our scripting is full court. We call it flow checklist. So we spend about 10 minutes where they're, again, running down the court. We'll yell out an action. Hey, we want a slash action. Hey, we want a kill cut, or hey, we want a pull action, or we want a pitch game action. So they'll go down, back, and it's a flow checklist. You have to get 2 actions on that end, and when you come back, you have 2 actions that our head coach will yell out. So we spend about 10 minutes doing that. So they're repping that within the flow without defense, 5-on-0 basically. And then a third part of how we break down is we can go into action shooting, which again, we break down these 3-player actions. It's just 3 players on the court, and we'll just rep through different types of reads that will come out of it. We can go hit the big, hit the back cut, or hit the big, go DHO, and then the back cut will end up getting a shot on the other side. And then in the strong action, we can tell them, hey, let's be creative. You can flare for each other. We can set a pin down for each other. And then you guys are just playing out of it. So we rep action shooting for about 10 minutes. And then from there, we kind of try to apply that into our setting. We'll have parts of 5-on-5 segments where like you can only play in flow. You're not going to call any sets. Doesn't matter. You're going to start with the drag screen, or you're going to start with the spread, pick and roll, and you're just going to kind of understand how to move with each other and understand how to play without calling a set every time. All right. So the next action, flow. This is very simple. Okay, we actually run in action here, and we create a 3-player alignment on the weak side. Okay, so from here. So again, I talked about this earlier. So if we have a player that maybe is not so comfortable coming off a pick and roll or a DHO, which is Alicia Clark in the corner, Jewel Lloyd, who's on that wing, they kind of recognize this. And so they just go directly into pick and roll. Now, ideally, maybe if they had enough time, they could have probably just flip-flopped, and then they could have ended up just setting a pin down. Alicia could have set a pin down for her. But again, actions and these things happen so fast in the game, you wouldn't expect them to be able to recognize it that quickly. So here they just decide to just go to the side pick and roll it. And again, this is like part of our flow. It's quick. We went right into the next action, and we're just moving that ball. We don't necessarily get something out of that action, but it just creates a shrink. And now we can get the ball to our mismatch, to our MVP right there. And again, as you can see, we don't necessarily score off the initial. We're just trying to have the defense shift from side to side. One of the last things that we have in our offense is called slash step up. So for this, it's real simple. Again, sometimes our big does get down the floor. All the clips that you have seen, our bigs are usually above. They're usually at the slot or the top. So here, maybe our big gets down the floor early, or we've run an action to where our big is either in the corner or in the dunker, as you can see from here. So now we have an action that's going on this side. So if you look on the weak side, now our big is in the corner. And then we have Alicia Clark at the wing, and then we have Jewel Lloyd at the slot. So as this action happens, we call it slash step up. Okay, so now instead, the wing cuts through, and that creates this wake. And now our big is running into a step up pick and roll, diving out of this. And then again, we have this pull action like I talked about earlier. Stewie is going to pull as our big dives and gets a wide open shot. Just that action right there created that open shot, as you guys can see. It's quick decisions. And again, this is so important to me. It's not, I can't emphasize enough. Look how hard Alicia Clark cuts. She knows she's not getting the ball. She just runs right through, just sprints right through. And that's as unselfish as you can get. Last clip here will be, again, slash step up. This is, I think, through our flow. So again, we come off a drag screen, whatever reason, Tosh on that right corner, she goes, kind of just drops down to that dunker area. We don't have anything on that second side. We swing through. Jordan Canada gets through. Now we're in a slash step up situation. And now we're creating that shot for one of our best scorers. And again, we have Stewie up top with the pole coming in. So as again, this seems, I guess I'm making it sound a lot simpler than it is. This has taken 7 years to get to this point. Last year was the pinnacle of it. So in my opinion, a lot of this stuff it seems simple, but it's very hard for players to recognize it in the flow of a situation, the pressures of a game. So if you can rep just one or two, or just be really good at one of them, the first part of it, then I think you can start messing around with it. Like this year, we've started messing around with, if we have a big down there, instead of always going into a slash step up, now you can go into a pitch game at the elbow, which you see a lot in the NBA, playing pick and rolls out of the elbows. I think a lot of times that ends up creating a lot of confusion when you have guard-to-guard stuff and the split actions, and it's very popular now. But again, like I said, we wouldn't be at that point unless we had all of this in already. And it's been actually it's been a challenge this year to have new players understand these concepts and to buy into these, because again, like you said, when you make a cut, you might not get the ball. And sometimes players don't like that. If you're used to having the ball in your hands all the time, players don't like to make that cut. And we've been fortunate enough to have players that are very unselfish and willing to make that read and willing to sacrifice for the team, just so we can have this type of flow in our offense.
Now, I know you mentioned a lot about spacing earlier in those points. Is there I know you talked about the X's and the squares. Is there other things that you have done to kind of hammer home spacing? Because I think that's probably one of the biggest gripes every coach talks about, how they just can't get their players to space out properly.
Film is a big thing, obviously. Film is 1000%. We try to show our players when they're jogging to spots, or when they're not cutting hard, or when they're on top of each other. That's part of our offensive edits after every game. We have a segment where it's like spacing on top of each other. I think once we've drilled it enough times in training camp, they understand, like, you just want to create that advantage, because when you have one guarding two, it just creates so much chaos for the defense. And that's what we're always trying to do, is trying to create that disadvantage. It's just like a pick and roll. When you're coming off a pick and roll, if you're trying to go 2-on-2, it's not going to work. When you come off that pick and roll and you have that advantage, now it becomes 2-on-1. It's the same idea, to have that kind of gap, that space between you and your big that's rolling. So I guess to answer your question, film is the next part I would go into, and just really harping on it in practice. That's the biggest thing, is like, and again, not everyone has the personnel to have coaches, just one coach or two coaches focusing on spacing. But if you hold them accountable in the beginning, that helps out a lot in the long run.
In your philosophy, because I know, coaching the G League and then coaching in the WNBA, obviously playing time is a huge part. In both organizations, do you guys go ahead and try to play deep, meaning 8 to 10, maybe in the middle of the game or earlier in the season, to get your players going? Because I know a lot of coaches, and I've been around a lot of programs, are always saying, well, they're just not good enough, or we just can't squeeze minutes here or there. Have you guys been able to do that, or what have you seen that's been helpful?
This year, especially for the WNBA, it's we've had to go really deep into our bench. Normally we do go pretty deep, but this year they played extended minutes, longer than we wanted to. And for us, I think it's just building confidence. As a coach, you want to play these players, and if they're showing up in practice and they're playing hard and they're giving what you need, then why not reward them? Just give them some extra time. And it's tough in the W because it's only a 40-minute game. So essentially you're coming in and you might only get 2 minutes, spot minutes, to show what you got. And that's a very tough spot to be put in, to come in for 2 minutes and expect to produce right away, make a defensive play, get a defensive stop, score a bucket, whatever the case may be. So in the W, I think when we do see it, when we do see opportunities, we try to really play our bench a little bit more, just to develop them. And again, we're always looking, not just now, but in the future, because if we want to develop, we have a younger team this year, we want to try to get them in early. And if we can give them that confidence, instill that, and empower them early on, then, you know, in the long run, hopefully, maybe it might not be this season, but next season they can have used that experience to flourish. In the G League, I think it's so different. I mean, as you well know, it's some days you might have both your two ways, some days you might have 3 assignments. I remember a time last year when we went up to Toronto and we were like expecting an 8-man roster, and all of a sudden the Raptors assigned Stanley Johnson, Matt, what's his name, the shooter, and they assigned 2 other draft picks, and it was like all of a sudden it's like, what the heck, you know what I mean? So it's a little bit tougher in the G League. I think you just have to try to manage it the best you can. And honestly, some guys aren't good enough, so you probably have to only play like 6 or 7. And for us, some teams that have a limited roster, you're going to be rolling with 6 or 7 that whole game, and it can be tough sometimes.
Wow. Last question on my end. That having the players in the WNBA, a lot of them play overseas, and a lot of them are playing over, for year long, right? So how do you guys manage practice in terms of load and what they're doing and everything else?
For me, I feel very bad for them. I just feel sorry that they have to go through all this stuff, and people don't understand how crazy their lives are. I can't even, like, honestly, Stewie and Mercedes, like, they came from the bubble directly to overseas, and they came back and played. Their only rest was the only reason why they had rest was because of the Olympic break. If they didn't have the Olympic break this year, we wouldn't have had 2 weeks to get to them. And I don't think the general public understands how hard it is for a basketball player, that they have to go through all this to get paid. They get paid more overseas than they get paid in the WNBA. And that's why they have to go over there. And that's why they have to sacrifice their bodies. And you see what the longevity for a lot of female players is not very high, because their bodies break down very early on because they're playing year round. And on top of that, it's a detriment because they don't get months to develop their game. Whereas, the NBA players, they get 2-3 months. And on top of that, they have staff that can fly out to so-and-so's hometown to work them out for, 2 weeks on end. You don't have that luxury. So these players, and I have the utmost respect for them, are just grinding for their lives, and they don't get any chance to get any better. They're just trying to make that money and just get in where they can fit in.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Coach. But here's the other part. We talked about giving ourselves credit. Coach, you have, I believe, 2 of the toughest jobs in the world, right? Now, I know from the outside, people are like, what are you talking about? He's a WNBA coach, world champion WNBA coach, and he's a G League. Well, I don't think people understand what you just mentioned about the WNBA, the hardships that those players have to go through, and then you have to get them mentally checked in. But then also in the G League, you're dealing with players who they all believe they belong in the league. So, and then like you just talked about, there's guys are shuffling in and out. So building a culture, building a team is extremely hard, because I know when I was in the G League, 1 month in, all the players they're bought in. Then a week later, they're like, oh man, I'm not playing. Oh, I'm out. Like, I got to find an agent. I got to do all this stuff, man. So big up to you, brother. You got 2 of the toughest jobs, in the world. Honestly, I love coaching the G League, but man, it is freaking tough, man. That's amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's tough, just in the sense that, like, yeah, the egos of some, like you just said, egos of some G League players, over the top. So, and it's refreshing to come back to WNBA most of the time, just understanding like they're just grateful to be here versus like G League players, not so much sometimes.
You know, I had one of the greatest stories I had, because in the G League, I'm sure you have tons of stories, but we were playing the Springfield Armor. This is years ago. There's not even a Springfield team. I had a player named Tiny Gallon who played at Oklahoma. Tiny Gallon was like 6'10", 300 pounds. And then I had Sharon Collins from Kansas, who was 5'10", 240, which means he probably drank a little bit too much. He was huge. But during the national anthem, all right, they're singing the national anthem. They've got their hands on their chest or whatever, and they're literally, again, 6'11", 5'10", literally talking shit to each other, like about to go into blows before the game. During the national anthem, they're swaying Star Spangled Banner, and there's like, man, when this is done, I'm gonna whoop your ass. And I'm like, we're about to play a game. This was real. This was real stuff people don't get, man.
Yes, it's 1000%. It's basically what's that Will Ferrell movie? Tropics.
Semi-pro. Yep.
Semi-pro. I mean, it's essentially that sometimes. And don't get me wrong, we're making it sound like the entire G League is like that.
Yeah, no.
It's not like that for everybody. If you have a good culture and you have good people around you, things end up working out. But yes, you will run into some just wild stories from, like you just said, people trying to fight each other, own teammates, to guys drinking on the bench or waking up and like players just missing, just decided to just go home and didn't even tell anybody, kind of thing. So yeah, it's not for the faint of heart being in the G League for sure.
Oh man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Is there a way where any of the coaches can reach out to you? Is it social media? Is it email? Where can they reach out to you and just kind of, throw a couple things at you?
Yeah. I can throw in my email in the chat. And you guys can kind of take it off from there. But again, feel free to ask any questions. Hopefully I explained everything that is clear and concise to everybody. But again, if you want to elaborate any more, just feel free to reach out.
Man. Well, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate, Coach. Thank you for coming on, man. I think from the flow, from the spacing, your experiences and everything else, man, you really are a true inspiration for a lot of coaches out there. And we wish you just all the best of luck with everything that you do.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys.
All right. Well, that's Coach Perry Wang, everybody. We're going to move on because we are on a train and we're moving forward. I got the next coach coming on. I hope he's ready. Aaron Katsuma. Hopefully I said your name right, Coach, from Colorado State. Coach, the crazy thing about this too is that you're at Colorado State and there's another slam ball guy who's on your staff, Sam Jones.
Sam Jones
was a slam ball player. This is like Slam Ball Asian Coaches Association phone call here. Oh. I freaking love it, man. But you're at Colorado State, Drake, Minnesota. Coach, thanks so much for going on. If you don't mind, just throw a little of your background and everything else moving forward.
Yeah, sure. So like you said, I was a student manager at the University of Minnesota for 4 years. Worked for a Hall of Fame coach, Tubby Smith, for 3. And then my senior year, I worked for Richard Pitino, who's now the head coach at New Mexico. I remember we were on a road trip at the University of Nebraska, and we're at dinner. And after dinner, he asked if I would be his grad assistant for the next 2 years. So, of course, on the spot, I accepted that. And then I ended up staying on for a 7th year as assistant director of player personnel. Before Coach Medved hired me at Drake University as his director of basketball operations. Was there for 10 months. Beautiful city of Des Moines, was there 10 months. And then, Coach Medved got the job at Colorado State and actually brought our whole staff with him, which is kind of unique in today's age. And he's a loyal guy, down to earth. And so, yeah, I've been fortunate to be here now going on year 4. Got a title change in addition to director of basketball operations, adding director of recruiting. And it's just such a blessing to work for somebody who allows you to grow and learn in your current position, but expand onto other horizons and just continue to get better. So that's the snippet of my story. And but yeah, so grateful to be here with all you guys and to share a little bit of what we do.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And by the way, people don't really know Des Moines, Iowa is a really nice place. I was just there and I was driving around. I was like, what is this place? There's great restaurants. There's art. Yeah. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, no, Des Moines is great. I enjoyed my 10 months there. I lived in West Des Moines, which is up and coming. Great mall, great food, like you said. And so, yeah, no, I enjoyed my time in Des Moines for sure.
Now, talk real quick before you jump in, and just like I asked Coach Perry about just your journey, and I think it's really important because myself being I grew up in a Filipino household. I'm half Filipino, half Spanish, but primarily grew up as a Filipino, and like there are pressures involved, right? There's super pressures involved. How have you been able to stay on track in your coaching career through the different positions, right? Because it's not as if you've had the coaching positions. You've been part of staffs in different roles where you get to learn and everything else. How has that process and journey been for you?
No, it's been a blessing, like I said, and I've been fortunate to work for 3 head coaches that um, that have trusted me and have allowed me to grow and learn on the job. And one thing, I said this last year, but just being a sponge, and no task is too big or too small. So when Coach Pitino got hired, I made it a point to just be the yes man for him. Whatever he needed, whatever the staff needed, they knew they could count on me to get whatever they needed done. Reliability was huge. And so, that carried over to my job with Coach Medved. And I remember my first day on the job, we had an official visit, and I was asked to get a German transcript translated somewhere on campus. And I knew nobody, but just found a way to get it done. So, like I said, just being reliable and somebody that our staff could count on was something that I just, with every head coach and staff, just try to model every single day. And it's led me to where I am now. So,
Man, that's awesome. Well, let's get you going. Jump into what you have going on for us today.
sure. So I want to, Coach Mike, there's some false advertising. He said we were talking about elite defensive concepts today. We were a good defense. I don't know if we could call ourselves elite quite yet, but just a little snippet of the last 3 years at Colorado State. 2018-19, we were 12-20. If you haven't heard of KenPom, it's an analytics site that takes into account who you're playing, personnel. It's a predictive measure. And anyways, we finished 261st in the country in defense in 2018-19. After that year, we decided to change our whole defensive scheme. 7 guys left the program, added 7 new guys. Prior to that, we were hedging all ball screens. We were digging in the post, and he tasked us with getting on the phone, talking to different staffs, and just figuring out how we can be better on that end. 2019-20, like I said, we changed our scheme to a no middle scheme that Baylor employed, Texas Tech employed, and we ended up being ranked 172nd in the country that year. So, a 90 point improvement. And then this past year we finished 72nd. So in 2 years we've gone from 261st to 72nd. A lot of it can be attributed to the personnel that we have and just the guys that we brought in who have now gotten comfortable playing in our scheme. But it's quite the jump, and something that we've decided to implement. The past 2 years is our post double. And there's about 6 clips after this that I'll show you, but basically something that we discovered 2 years ago was that high clarity equals high performance, low clarity equals low performance. So we try to simplify things for our guys as much as possible. So in terms of our post double, we got 4 simple rules. As the big, force off the block, no easy post catches. Anytime there's a ball screen, anytime the offensive big is going block to block, we try to quick front, force him off the block, and force his catches where he doesn't want to catch them. When you watch the clips, you'll see that once the offensive player catches the ball off the post, our bigs rule is you have to take away vision middle. You cannot allow the offensive player to go middle. And then I can get into talking about our goalie, our sink and spy, and do these clips. But here we go. Let's see. So here's our first clip. So we actually stole this from Loyola Chicago. We were playing them down in a tournament in the Caymans, and our big kid, number 32, he actually led the country in rebounding his junior year, averaged about 18 a game. And so something that they did was that they employed this post defense. And so you can see number 25, Cameron Krutwig on Loyola, his feet are splitting our two bigs' feet. And he's taking away vision with his top hands to the middle and forcing baseline. And what we call number 24 right here is the goalie. So he's, on the midline. Number 30, Agwup, we call him the sink guy. So he's got to take away the drift pass. And then Lucas Williamson right here, we call him the spy. He's got to get to the logo. Typically there's a logo in the middle of the paint, and he's got to take two. So if there's a skip pass, whether it's in the top of the key or this window, what we call the slot area, he's got to take that next pass. But you can see here, they do a good job of being physical, forcing Nico baseline and forcing him into that, what we call our double or our blitz, sorry. So here's another clip of it. We're getting into offense. Throw the ball in. You see Krutwig again. He's being physical with his chest, taking away vision middle. Number 4 there, he's the goalie. And as soon as he faces up, he goes. That's a bad trap, but pretty good pass. So here's us here. This is in transition. Chris Martin, number 1, he's our 4-man. He should try to get into a front. But again, it's in transition. Tyler Bay, number 1, he's in the NBA right now. But you can see as soon as this offensive post player catches the ball, Chris jumps to the high side. He's trying to take away vision middle. Our goalie rotates over and has active hands and takes the ball away from him. Turnover. And you can see Nico here. He's in a unique position. He doesn't typically play the sink, but as soon as he sees his eyes go towards the drift, he's dropping. Adam's got to do a better job of getting to the logo here. But here's a few more clips. Post entry, that's way too deep. But you can see Adam, he's the help guy. He's what we call the goalie. He's dropping. Little confusion between our two guards here, but you know what? They both go. We end up turning them over. Good trap. Same thing here. Isaiah's the goalie. As soon as he dribbles baseline, there he goes. On the dribble, he's trapping, being physical. You got the sink guy and Adam right here. Hiring number 0. He's a spy. He's playing 2. Turnover. And so this is something that we did every day. Broke it down in 4-on-4 shell to make it more difficult on our perimeters, rotating. But as you can see, again, take away the middle. And we force a lot of turnovers here. This time we have a guard trying to front. Our 5-man's rotating over as a double. We got to do a better job of getting inside 05 here. But again, they're going to throw it back in. Nico does a good job of getting on his top side, taking away vision to the middle. Here comes Chris, the trap guy, drop. Adam plays 2, and he's just reading the ball, reading the eyes of the offensive player. Good job forcing them off. And then now when you get really good, your guys start to take charges. So we actually took 2 charges on this kid early on in the game, rotating over, offensive players out of control, step up outside the paint, take a charge. Here's another one. Good. Notice how we force him off the block. Deshaun, our freshman at the time, is not allowing middle. He's taking away the vision. Being physical, good. Makes him spin back. Charge. So that's something that.
Hey, Coach, quick question.
Yeah.
For you. So I see guys like really taking away the high side. Is there a point on the floor in the post up where they get so high that you're not influencing it as much? Or if they catch it at like the 3rd hash mark, like even like, are you still on top?
So you're talking if they're like right here?
Yeah.
So again, it's the floor for us will always look this way. If the ball is caught up in this area, maybe we're not as high, he's not splitting the floor, but he cannot allow the offensive player to drive middle. So whatever he has to do to force him back to the baseline, or, if he forces a dribble up the floor this way, that's fine. But if there's a penetrating dribble, he's got to cut him off and funnel him into our goalie, who can step up. And then boom, as soon as that happens, now that triggers our sink guy, that triggers our spy guy to get into position to take away the drift or to play 2 on the backside. But just cannot allow the ball. If the ball gets in the middle, let's say Bay catches it here and he drives middle. Well, this guy's out of position. He can't get back to the corner. This guy thinks he's got to take the sink to the corner, and then it just opens up these 2 spots right here for one more or a step in 3. So our guys know now, just whatever they got to do to keep the ball out of the middle, that's what they got to do. Otherwise, there's a horn and they're coming out of the game. Good question. Something else that we implemented, like I said, 2 years ago, was our ice ball screen. We were hedging up the floor. Our big, somehow our first year was first team all defense. But he was really good protecting the rim, whether it was wall ups, taking charges, just being a physical presence. And so when we felt like when he was hedging ball screens, we were pulling him away from the basket where he was the most effective. So we wanted to try this ice defense out where we try to force, keep the ball on one side. Our rules, again, we got 5 rules. As a big, LEC, loud, early, clear. Call that ice out early, loud and clear. Guard, once you hear ice, push up into the offensive player and get on his top hip. Again, with our defense, it works because we don't allow middle. Both guard and the bigs must have active hands. For the bigs, it's to discourage the pocket pass, and for the guard, it's to discourage any throwback action. Our other 2 rules: if the guard ends up snaking the ball screen, it's an auto switch. Big yell switch, the guard knows he's got to crack down. And then if there's any penetrating drive, let's just say, it's happening fast, our guard can't get attached, and the offensive player is penetrating and our guard sees the back of his head or the back of his numbers, that's also an auto switch. So here are a few clips just to kind of talk about our ice defense. Let me make this a little smaller. So as you can see here, one thing, again, the floor is super loaded. So when we're in our ice defense, there's 3 guys, 10 eyes on the ball. All 5 guys are on the other side of the midline. Again, we got our goalie. We got our sink and our spy still. We tell our top guy, and Kendall tags a little bit here, but it's really Chris right here who's going to tag, take the roller. Adams, once the ball's picked up, Adams got to start funneling out because he's got to play the skip. If there is one, and Kendall's got to get back to the first pass guy right here. But you can see it's a good job of staying in the double there. We let our big Nico, he had great feel. So if he felt like he could corral the offensive player and our guard could come back and trap, we would allow him to do that. But you can see our guys start to funnel out as soon as this ball's picked up. And we force a turnover there. Same thing, we did a lot of switching this year to try to keep the ball on one side. So switch, you saw Hiron here jump to the high side to force him back and to keep him on that side. Here we go again. That's a bad penetration right there. We don't want to allow middle like that, but good. Flat ball screen, we were yelling middle, but again, fight through, good. Once you see this too, Adam does a great job. He's the goalie, he's got to take the roller, but he's just reading the offensive player's eyes, and he sees that he's making that skip, he can get out early and fan out. Here's another clip. Good, ice, get into the ball like this, good. Force him down, there's those active hands, causing a turnover. Another good clip. Here's Tulsa. Good. Getting the ball. So since Hiram sees the back of his numbers right here, that's an auto switch. Our goalie steps up, but now it's like our post defense. Goalie steps up. Here's our sink. Here's our spy. Hiram's got the closest pass. Last clip. Again, back of the head. That's an auto switch. Isaiah knows he's got to take the rolling big turnover. So that's, in a nutshell, some of the simple things that we do now that our guys have become accustomed to. Am I still sharing my screen? No? Okay.
Nope.
But some of the changes that we made from year 1 to year 2 and 3, and our guys, like I said, having been in the system for 2-3 years now, understand the rotations, and we have different communications for every action. So our guys just understand what they need to do defensively now, and hopefully we can go from good to great this year on that end of the floor and become a top 50 defense.
Wow, I love it. Now let's on your defense, on the post defense, what was the level? I don't want to say, because I love it, but of frustration when you first started teaching it, right? Because you're telling basically give the baseline, and like any defender, they're always worried about someone else coming over. Where was the learning curve there?
So honestly, it came from the film, from the Loyola film. You know, as soon as we saw that, we clipped it out and we were able to show our guys, hey, like, this is what it's supposed to look like. Our 5-man, Nico, a super smart kid, like I said, had great feel, high IQ. And so from that day on, we worked on it every single day. And we do 2 ends defense first. So we'll do our offensive stuff first, then we'll go to 2 ends defense, where it's guards and bigs. And our bigs just worked on, you know, working on pushing the catch out. And then once that catch happened, playing the top side, and just worked on that footwork. And then on the other end, our guards worked on, okay, as soon as they saw, because they knew Nico was going to take away the middle. Once they saw that dribble baseline, it was boom, I'm going to come over. You know, if I can get my hand on the ball, I'm going to try. Otherwise, I'm meeting them with my chest and taking away. They're trying to get a deflection on the drift pass. So we try to keep it really simple, break it down that way on 2 ends. And then, like you said, it's all about 5 guys playing on a string defensively. And so once we got our terminology down and guys understood, okay, now I'm the sink, or now I'm the spy, or I'm the goalie, I think that's when it changed for us. But yeah, there was definitely initially a grace period where it didn't look how we wanted it to initially, but as we kept, you know, getting reps and practicing, our guys continued to get better at it and became a weapon for us.
What did you see what did you see teams try to do when they would say, how would they game plan for that? Because I find that's super effective. I actually remember the Suns did it not many years, like 5 years ago, not like that, but they would send basically your trapper over to the empty block. Yep. to avoid that. What were some things that you guys saw that they were trying to counter?
So probably the most difficult cover for us was when offensive teams would cut the 45 but screen in our sink guy. So our spy would, you know, for a period of time would go with the cutter down. And I can pull up maybe there's not a great clip, but anyways, the spy would go with the 45 cutter, and then that cutter would stop and screen in our sink guy. And even though it was a lob pass, sometimes our guys wouldn't get to the skip. Multiple cutters, whether it's an Iverson cut, and then another 45 cut after that, can screw us up at times. And other times, you know, for instance, UNLV would play too big, so they would try to wedge in our smaller guard and just throw it over the top. But our guys, like I said, just got so comfortable with how we trap the post that if there was a 0-4 that was wedging up, our guards knew just to face them and try to push them out. And our sink and spy would then just try to rotate as fast as they could and take the next pass. Our five sometimes would rotate out if they had to, but just communication and rotation, our guys got comfortable doing that.
There's a question on there about how do you guys handle, the Spanish pick and roll stuff? Obviously with you forcing baseline and everything else, you found a lot of success against that.
So when we do a pretty good job of scouting. And so whenever we see a stack or a Spain action, what we try to do is we'll yell weak and force the handler left, and we'll try to sink our 5-man below the stack or below this, I guess, the Spain screener, and lift our guard to switch it, and then we'll switch the roll replace out. That's what we try to do. Obviously, it's not always that easy, but sometimes even as that ball screen's happening and X5 isn't able to drop below the screener, we'll play in a drop. Our backside guard or wing might have to take the roll replace guy, and we'll just keep the screening defender as our goalie, and just they throw a skip, he's got to rotate out.
And everything that you've seen, you feel really good. Obviously you, but there's so many things about different defensive concept. But that no middle concept is really huge for what you guys are trying to do.
Yeah, no, anytime the ball gets driven middle or anytime the ball gets middle, we tend to have some defensive breakdowns, and our rotations aren't as crisp probably. And not that you want to practice the exception, but for the longest time when we implemented this defense, anytime there was a middle drive or anytime the ball, post caught the ball and went middle, we would stop the drill. And our guys struggled with the rotations. And so now, we kind of let them play through it so that they, get experience doing that. But for the longest time, it was middle drive. All right, next, and so, but just the foot positioning, we tell our guys nose on the inside shoulder, so that you're not opening up and giving them a direct line, baseline drive, but you got to be able to guard your yard. And after the first dribble, there's got to be a collision, whether it's your hip, your shoulder, your forearm. You cannot allow a direct line drive. There's got to be some sort of contact, and then you got to show your hands. And just again, our guys now, we had no seniors last year on our roster. We've got guys that have been in our system 3 years now, and they understand what is expected of them on that end, or we'll go find someone to get it done.
I love it, man. I love it. Now, how can they reach out to you, and any last words for any coaches trying to get to where you are or move up in their coaching career?
Again, for me, it's just be a sponge, and like I said last year, just network as much as possible, whether that's working camps or, I'm going to leave my email, my cell phone number, call me, text me, email me, whatever. It's just all about who you know and what are you going to do to separate yourself. Learn video, learn Photoshop, learn how to make, iMovie, whatever it is, just to differentiate yourself and be invaluable. Whatever you can do, no task is too big, no task is too small, and just be someone people can rely on.
I love it, man. I love it. You can leave your stuff in the chat.
Yeah, I'm gonna post it right now. So there it is. If I can do anything for any one of you guys, again, don't hesitate to reach out in any form, social media, those, my email, cell phone, Mike, Steve, Connor, all you guys, appreciate you having me on again. Steve, hopefully everything in Louisiana, New Orleans is okay. I know it's kind of uncertain right now, but thinking about you and everyone down there, and go Rams, baby.
Coach, I appreciate, man, you jumping on, brother. That is amazing. We do have one question. Anywhere I go, I always get a Kai Soto question. Kai Soto is like a 7'2" Filipino guy who's like 19, 20 years old. And I know people are always asking, like, what does he have to do? I'm going to tell you this: Guy Soto needs to learn how to play a little more aggressive. He may end up being like Japheth Aguilar, who I trained many years ago, who was like the 6'9" jumping beast who played at Eastern Kentucky and also played well, he tried out for the D-League Anaheim team actually. But that's what Kai's got to do. He's got to learn, and he's got to stop jumping from country to country trying to learn basketball. He's got to go ahead and stick to it, learn a specific style, and he's got to be able to find his identity as a player, which is really, really tough for him. So listen, guys, I appreciate you coming on. I got to thank the sponsors. I got to thank Rising Coaches. I got to thank Shot Quality. Mike, I'm just pumped that I remember who the sponsors were. That's for sure. I almost forgot. I had to write that stuff down. But we had to thank our guests. Coach Perry was on. Coach Aaron was on. And I'm going to tell you guys, reach out to them. Say hello. Introduce yourself. Ask questions. You know, as Coach said, be a sponge. You never know who is watching. You never know who is admiring your work. And you never know who's listening to how you talk and what you say. So whatever else you did, be valuable. You have to be valuable. And sometimes, guys, being valuable as a basketball coach is not necessarily the X's and O's. It's the soft skills. It's how you approach it. It's how you work with it. It's how you get coach's cup of coffee. I used to say this all the time. When I was at Duke, my head coach, she wants to go recruiting at 8 a.m. I had the car down there 7:45 with her favorite cup of beverage, ready to go. Because your job, anytime your assistant coach is like the head coach, they've got too many things on their plate. You got to remove them. You got to take them from them so that you can go ahead and be that all-world coach for you. So if anything else has nothing to say, I appreciate you guys with everything. And I think we'll see you next time.